How did the death of this one man doom the Nazis to lose World War II? When we think of wars, we think of the battles that turned the tide for one side or the other. Clever strategies and tactics. Battle plans formed of military genius. Or, for those who look at the history of wars more deeply, consider the logistics of the war, the manufacturing bases, the military doctrines adopted. And it is here where the loss of this one general was one of those pivotal moments that thankfully changed the course of history. So who was this man, and how could his loss be so incredibly significant to the outcome of World War II? The man in question is General Lieutenant Walter Wever. Born in 1887 in East Prussia, Wever was a career military man, serving for the German Empire, the Weimar Republic and Nazi Germany. He saw action in World War I and served as a staff officer for the Oberste Heeresleitung, the German Army High Command. Held in high regard and with an outstanding service record, Wever became the commander of the Reichsluftfahrtministerium, the Nazi Ministry of Aviation, in September 1933, and in March of 1935 he became Chief of Staff of the newly formed Luftwaffe, the aerial warfare branch of the Wehrmacht. It was here that he started to influence German military doctrine. Prior to Wever's command, the German air combat forces, the Deutsche Luftstreitkräfte, and the German naval aviators of the Marine Fliegerabteilung were very much focused on the support of their parent forces, the German Imperial Army and Navy. Their roles limited to troop support, reconnaissance, and adherence to the military doctrines of the Truppenführung, tactical dive bombing. Wever, however, had been influenced by the theories of the Italian General Giulio Douhet, a key proponent of strategic bombing. Wever outlined 5 key points to air strategy. 1. To destroy the enemy air force by bombing its bases and aircraft factories and defeating enemy air forces attacking German targets. 2. To prevent the movement of large enemy ground forces to the decisive areas by destroying railways and roads, particularly bridges and tunnels, which are indispensable for the movement and supply of forces. 3. To support the operations of the army formations, independent of railways, i.e. armored forces and motorized forces, by impeding the enemy advance and participating directly in ground operations. 4. To support naval operations by attacking naval bases, protecting Germany's naval bases, and participating directly in naval battles. And 5. To paralyze the enemy armed forces by stopping production in the armaments factories. Wever moved quickly to establish the Ural bomber program, so named to emphasize the use of strategic bombing to target Soviet factories recently moved to beyond the Ural Mountains, hampering the Soviet ability to fight, without the need for ground forces to advance. In 1935, the Reichsluftfahrtministerium ordered prototypes of the Dornier Do-19 and the Junkers Ju-89, both 4-engine long-range bomber designs, presented to Wever following several secret meetings to establish requirements. The Ju-89 and its competitor, the Dornier Do-19, both proved promising. Wever's vision of a Nazi strategic bombing capability was coming to fruition. But fate would intervene. Thankfully for the Allies, Wever was killed in a plane crash in 1936. His successors, Albert Kesselring and Ernst Udet, favored the Truppenführung doctrine, utilizing smaller tactical aircraft used to support army operations on the battleground rather than through attacking enemy industry. The Ural prototypes would limp along without the driving force of Wever. The Dornier Do-19 V1 prototype flew on the 28th of October 1936, just 4 months after the death of Wever. The Junkers Ju-89 V1 prototype also flew on the 11th of April 1937. But bolstered by the successes of the Condor Legion in the Spanish Civil War between 1936 and 1939, Kesselring's approach became cemented. The fate of the German strategic bomber was sealed. On the 29th of April 1937, Hermann Göring, in his role as plenipotentiary of Hitler's four-year plan to mobilize the German economy for war, halted strategic bomber development. A decision he would later deeply regret, saying, "Those inferior heavy bombers of the other side are doing a wonderful job of wrecking Germany from end to end." As the war progressed, the dive-bombing doctrine obsession was epitomized by the troubled Heinkel Herr 177 project, a four-engine long-range heavy bomber design being required by the Reichsluftfahrtministerium to include the ability to also perform medium-angle dive bombing, a folly that would delay its development until the requirement was rescinded in 1942. The focus on the V-series rocket technology and the ill-fated transatlantic-ranged America bomber program further diffused effort away from a viable heavy bomber plan. But by now the development of such a capacity was moot. The Allies had developed its strategic bombing capability and was targeting Germany's industrial base. Precision bombing attacks, such as Operation Tidal Wave, were depleting the petroleum, oil and lubrication products a mechanized force required. Germany was done. Now consider this. On the 8th of June 1938, the Junkers Ju-89 second prototype from the Ural program reached an altitude of 23,760 feet, with a payload of 22,000 pounds. In comparison, the British first entry into the heavy bomber was a year later, with the very flawed Avro Manchester, with an inferior service ceiling of 19,200 feet, and only 10,350 pounds of payload. It's very easy to see how the Germans could have formed a strategic bomber command and brought about a very different outcome of World War II. But with the loss of Walter Wever and his strategic bombing doctrine, instead in late 1938, both Ju-89 aircraft were transferred to the Luftwaffe, where they were used as heavy transport aircraft. Thank goodness for that.